In this video, I will explain in a quick and understandable way what the Syntergic Theory is, which is very interesting. Additionally, I will talk about how it could serve us on both an individual and collective level. The Syntergic Theory is the result of a lifetime of work by Dr. Jacobo Grinberg, who dedicated over 15 years to the creation and development of a novel mental framework. The term syntergic is a neologism derived from the words synthesis and energy. This theory is a model of reality as we know it and the reality we do not know, but which is managed by certain unorthodox humans, such as shamans, monks, yogis, and beings who handle states of mind that ordinary people might call elevated or altered. Let's remember that Jacobo Grinberg studied these kinds of people and was able to demonstrate that there are abilities the human brain is capable of, but that remain dormant since we have never been taught to manage or develop them. One of these dormant abilities is extraocular vision, which Jacobo Grinberg researched and experimented with in children who were taught to read with a blindfold over their eyes. There are witnesses who claim that Jacobo Grinberg could know the content of a book just by touching it. This ability has also been known to yogis for thousands of years, but its teaching and dissemination have remained hidden. Jacobo Grinberg also had experiences with Don Lucio, a powerful shaman from the state of Morelos, Mexico, who could control the weather and belonged to the lineage of graniceros or lightning ritualists. It seems that Jacobo was his apprentice. On the other hand, Pachita could perform surgeries, materialize organs, transplant, and suture with the help of a hunting knife. Jacobo Grinberg was present at these operations for some time, and his testimony is recorded in his book called Pachita, part of the series The Shamans of Mexico. Considering his own learning and development, Jacobo knew that all people could develop unimaginable abilities and perform things that would commonly be categorized as miracles, paranormal events, or hallucinations. As a scientist, he had to find a way to explain how all of this is possible and part of the same reality. This is where the Syntergic Theory comes into play, attempting to scientifically explain how all these abilities, such as so-called paranormal phenomena and even miracles, can be possible in this plane of reality. The Syntergic Theory takes models of realities and ancient and modern philosophies, each of which claims to be knowledgeable and possess the truth of reality, even though some are apparently contradictory. However, the theory reconciles their fundamentals and makes them compatible with one another, resulting in the conclusion that they are all truths, but simply expressed differently in the fundamental perception. In his book The Syntergic Theory, Jacobo Grinberg explains the reality model of the Kabbalah, the model of theosophical philosophy, the shamanic model, the Buddhist model, the model of transpersonal psychology, and finally, the Syntergic Theory. For example, in the shamanic model, there are two general levels of consciousness, the tonal and the nahual. The visible world corresponds to the tonal and refers to the level of everyday consciousness, while the invisible world, or nahual, refers to a level of consciousness only accessible to seers. The Buddhist model teaches two states of consciousness, the everyday consciousness prior to enlightenment and the enlightened consciousness. The level of everyday consciousness is one where there is identification with emotional, bodily contents, or mental fluctuations. The level of enlightened consciousness transcends fluctuating and temporary identifications, placing the adept in a state of contact with the reality of the pure self. Part of the Syntergic Theory are the novel concepts it introduces, which are necessary to understand the model. The lattice is the fundamental structure of space, a hyper-complex energy network or matrix of absolute coherence and total symmetry. It is reality as it is, without the filter of our mind, senses, or perception. It is all of space containing everything at the same time, making space-time one and the same. The lattice remains completely invisible until some portion of it alters its state of coherence. Any material object is actually an unrepeatable organization of the lattice's structure. Outside of it, there is no lattice, no objects, no temporal alterations. It is only when the lattice changes its structure that time passes and objects appear. The human brain is a hyper-complex structure similar in structure to the lattice but much smaller and more limited. By receiving and interpreting information from the lattice through the senses, it alters the lattice and creates its own reality. This alteration of the lattice begins in the human brain and affects all dimensions of space. That is, we perceive it, and our actions have effects on everything we perceive and interpret from the universe. This alteration that we perceive as reality is called the neuronal field. Similarly, the human brain works with energy and vibrations within sensory bands and consciousness bands, which are energy and vibrational levels that determine the way we see and interpret the world. In the lattice, there are syntergic bands similar to the sensory and consciousness bands found in the human brain. The syntergic bands of the lattice interact with the brain's consciousness bands of the same vibration and energy, thus changing our interaction and perception depending on the energy level of our bands. In other words, when we vibrate high and our energy is high, the lattice will modify in a similar way, and we will manifest good vibes, good things, and pleasant experiences. Conversely, when we vibrate low, discomfort, bad feelings, and other undesirable things manifest in our lives. At this point, we can begin to see the use and importance of the Syntergic theory. If one could consciously change the vibration and energy of the sensory or consciousness bands of the brain, one could then connect and interact with syntergic bands of the lattice of the same vibration and energy, thus being able to manifest, materialize, or change the present reality. In the case of individuals who can change their consciousness band to one of very high vibration and energy, the manifestations in their reality could be colossal, unimaginable, and incredible. This would explain Pachita's materializations or Don Lucio's control over a storm. Going a bit further, every being with a brain and consciousness has its own neuronal field or interpretation of reality according to its vibratory and energetic state. This includes animals and everything that has consciousness. Each has its neuronal field, which in turn interacts with other neuronal fields of other people or beings, forming a network of interacting neuronal fields that modify each other. This network is referred to in the Syntergic theory as the hyperfield. A very important point to clarify is that the hyperfield only exists as the interpretation and interaction of many brains with the lattice, meaning that it only exists for beings whose brain functions similarly within the same syntergic band. This explains that there could be other planes, other dimensions, or other realities that could be right here, but to which we do not have access because we cannot perceive them within our neuronal field, but which are entirely real for those beings that exist in a syntergic band different from ours. Even more interesting is that this is the same concept that other millennia-old philosophies already handled, but with different words. This is the matrix, the Maya, the veil of Isis, the illusion. If that weren't enough, the Syntergic theory not only explains the matrix and the Maya, but also explains what is popularly known as the law of attraction, making it clear that to manifest, it is only necessary to change to a higher vibration syntergic band. As we can see, Jacobo Grinberg's Syntergic theory is not only interesting, but with it, we can explain many philosophies, realities, and phenomena, some hidden like extraocular vision, and others very popular like the law of attraction. We could also explain the ancient principles of the Kybalion, such as the universe is mental, as above, so below, the all-in-all, to name a few examples. Jacobo Grinberg had reached high mental states, and in several of his works, he even mentions that he practiced meditation exercises to see his past lives. This phenomenon could also be explained with the Syntergic theory, considering that everything exists in the lattice and that space-time is one and the same. The possibility of affecting gravitation at will, that is, levitating, a practice some yogis can achieve in their meditations, could also be explained by the Syntergic theory as a modification of energy in a neuronal field to levels unimaginable for the ordinary human, but entirely possible. Jacobo Grinberg affirmed that all people could develop unimaginable abilities over time and practice, such as healing instantly, materializing objects, or even creating their own realities. All this from the perspective of mental and spiritual development. The only requirement is to be in high vibration and develop the abilities to control, interpret, and modify the syntergic bands of the brain to interact with the syntergic bands of the lattice. In summary, the Syntergic theory is the model of reality that shows us that matter, as we perceive it, does not actually exist, that space and time are one and the same, and that we and the entire universe are energy interacting with each other. The reality as we perceive it is nothing more than the alteration of an energy matrix, lattice, that remains invisible. The only existing reality is the mind and pure consciousness. Therefore, the only way to perceive an absolute reality is by changing our perception and achieving enlightenment. What do you think about the Syntergic theory? Do you think it can be applied in daily life or spirituality? Do you believe that these theories about the perception of reality could have a positive impact on our lives and the way we interact with the world? Could you share any example or personal experience related to the concepts addressed in the Syntergic theory?